So I think that we are all here in person and online. The camera, I will just show you the room a little bit to those on Skype. Yeah, now it works fine. Yeah. So if we have any problems, then I will switch off the video. But I'm surprised it works very, very well right now. So. Right. So. Right now the idea is to start the meeting with a couple of sentences from the coordinators, and then Francesca Rosselli came to us and she wanted to tell a few words about the working groups in general, and after that we can have some questions. If you have some questions, just feel free to ask. It should work probably fine. And after that, so we count, like as I said in the agenda, for like 15 maybe minutes or 20 minutes for Francesca's presentation and discussion. Then Maciej will tell a couple of words and Piotr about the cost actions in general, what their experiences were, and because this is something that we were thinking about. And in the last part, me and Wojtek will be talking a little bit about the current state of the initiative and what we want to do next and what are the decisions to be made in the near future. So it's 9:15, so it will be okay if we finish in an hour. We don't have to use the whole time. It will be okay, but we will see what happens there. So if you have any problems with audio, then let us know. Yeah, I will be looking at Skype. You can write or say something. Yeah, so I'm giving the floor to Francesca.
Okay, you're not introducing the.
Yeah, we will be we already sent a lot of documents earlier, and in the end we will go back to the working groups. Group stuff, yeah.
I have a few slides. I don't know, but otherwise I can just talk through them, and if there are questions.
But I think can we just...
if you sit here, then we can...
No, but probably just switch, but I mean, probably, yeah,
if you sit
share
here,
the
I
screen
can
now, right? So,
share the screen.
or we can, but then you can try to transfer the slides, or you can just show it to, or just go to them.
Yeah, there is no particular graphic that it's
Yeah.
on it. I can just show you that these.
And then take shape of
Yeah, well, I was invited yesterday by Tomasz here. So I didn't have time really to prepare really only for this meeting, but I knew some of the information and slides that I prepared for other meetings as well. So really a short introduction about the DARIA working groups, what they are, what they do, how they are funded, what kind of funding possibilities there are, and also what are the rights and responsibilities, let's say, of the DARIA working groups. So as you might have understood by now, the DARIA working groups are sort of grassroots, self-organized and collaborative groups that originate in already existing communities of practices. And they're organized usually by a group of people from the research landscape. But not only, so there are many researchers, but not only researchers. That's a nice thing about working groups. So you don't need a certain title to be part of a working group. So what makes working groups different from projects or institutional work? So first of all, they are connected to one or more VCC, so Virtual Competence Center. But working groups are self-organized in their organization, their planning, their relationship, and their agendas. They are open-ended. This means they are open to new collaborations. They are open to new people participating in the working groups. And they are also welcome, actually, to start interactions with other working groups and interest groups. They are open to anyone with an interest in this specific topic. Usually the last one is limited, so Daria doesn't set a certain duration of working groups. So it really depends on the working group, whether they come together for a specific reason to achieve a certain goal, like project-wise, or so far the working groups that we have on board, they've been going through different phases, so like more active phases. Sometimes it seemed like they wanted to close down, but then someone else was taking over the working group and coordinating them. So there has been like different speeds of, let's say, productivity and creation of working groups. The downside of working groups is that as of now there was no stable financial support, so they are not paid, or there is no constant budget for working group, but we will go through them in a minute. And their activities are based on collaboration, as we said before. This is if you can see that it's a nice visualization of the working groups as of 2018. So we need to update this one, but it shows graphically like how the working groups evolved when they were born, and some of them stopped, some of them merged with other working groups, and we got quite a few new working groups in the last year as well, and the colors represent the different VCCs. So the green one is VCC 1, the orange is VCC 2, the blue is VCC 3, the one you're interested in to connect, I think, and VCC 4 is the purple one. Well, actually we have one that was interrupted, so VCC 4 is the VCC with less working groups at the moment. And the VCCs are 4, so the 3, the one you're interested more in is the scholarly content management. VCC 1 is the one on e-infrastructure. VCC 2 is the more research and education connected. And the VCC 4 is about advocacy, impact, and outreach. About how to support budget-wise the working groups, so there has been a lot of discussion in the last years on how we could best support the working groups. So there was the first trial of funding for working group was in 2017-18, so almost 2 years ago. That was the first trial, and we went through also, we're actually the project that were funded in that funding call, they're ending also right now, some of the projects, so we are kind of closing the circle in this very moment. And of course, like we studied and reflected on the outcomes, what went well, what didn't go well, what the working groups need, what they don't need. So what the outcomes of this reflection ultimately was that so the outcome of that reflection was that ultimately, so at the moment we are proposing what we call working group travel envelope. So it's a lightweight way to fund travels for working group. It's not that we fund each and every person who applies for it, so there is an application and a sort of competition. So you need to justify why you need certain funding, and you need to respect a few requirements. And it is specifically designed for travels to the Daria annual events, so to allow working groups to travel to this kind of event, or to travel to other events where you guys represent Daria. And this happens every year. This travel envelope is a lightweight form of support for travels. Every other year, so every 2 years, we will keep this working group funding call, which is more project-based. So it's not, it doesn't need to involve travel, because that one is covered by the travel envelope. But this is more project-based, and it takes place every 2 years. It's launched every 2 years, so the next one is probably, it will be in the second half of 2019, it will be launched. And working groups can also apply to the Daria theme call, which also takes place every other year. So the order is this: working group travel every year, working group funding call is every other year, and the other year as well is the working group team. So every year there will be like a call to which the working group can apply. So this is in summary. This is a decision that actually we took very recently, so that's why I don't have presentation or visualization about this. That's it, I think, from my side. Maybe also important to know, does some of you have access to the as a Daria account? So, okay, so I will send you a link to the our Daria wiki.
Okay.
So there is a very interesting document, I think, for you, like it's a policy document for working groups and BCCs, where there are written all the rules in details. What do you need to do to apply to a working group? What
You got this.
you got that? Okay.
Probably you send it out.
It might be, yeah.
Yeah, you'll imagine.
So
With
that's
the template.
okay. Yeah, that's very important document, and yeah, I think that's all. I would suggest as soon as you have a draft template or a draft proposal ready, like just send it to us so that we can start the validation phase. So it usually we tend to be quite picky, but there are a few passages that we need to do right for people. So I need to work with you creating the proposal. It needs to go to the directors to have a final approval via Tomasz and BCC3 to also feedback and give you feedback. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So this, I think, we'll be covering in the second part, right? The process of the approval, the application, right?
Yeah, in the last part we'll be talking a little bit about this. Yeah.
Oh, and last but not least, sorry, at 11 there is another session, which is the working group meeting exchange.
Yeah, sure.
So this one is a meeting designed for working group chairs. So I don't know who you is, but I would suggest, you're not a working group yet, but official. But I would suggest you to attend this one.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of information. You can meet other working group chairs, and it's very
Yeah, I think that
useful to exchange and getting to know them. Yeah.
So we are open to some questions if you have some on Skype or in person. If not, then we will have a couple of questions right now.
Yeah, we have prepared some questions based on the questionnaires we have sent to the working group members. So maybe one question is about non-Daria countries, or about the participation of the people from countries which are already not in Daria anymore. As far as we know, it is possible, or are there any limits?
No, it is possible. To my knowledge, the chairs need to be from Daria countries, but the one or two chairs. But the rest of the participants can be from another country, so it's not doesn't exclude anyone.
Yeah, perfect, thanks.
Just to remind, if I remember well, but correct me if I'm wrong, there is also a kind of rule that there should be at least 3 people from 3 different member states which are in the RIA, right? In order to set up a working group.
Well, that
But
needs
this
to be the chair. Yeah.
2, so 2, not 3, because okay.
There are some exceptional cases where
Yeah,
there are
yeah,
3
but there
chairs.
can be exceptions.
Yeah.
It's in working group policy document, I think.
Yeah.
But it's already covered here, I think.
Yeah.
The
But
Africans
we more than 3 countries.
Yeah.
And people from Daria institutions also, so we weren't that worried about this requirement. We rather focused on getting the people who wants to work on this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Yeah. So we one I think more discussion.
We wanted to ask for some communication channels, if there is some mail conference or something like that for the DARA members or group members.
So there are different channels for communication. So there is a Basecamp group that to where the working group chairs will be added. So not everyone, because otherwise it would be very crowded. So that is for internal communication, let's say between me, working groups, and so it can be like, for example, if you have messages for other working groups, if you are organizing something and you would like to other working groups to let you know. Then Dario can provide a Basecamp channel just for the working group, so internal, where all the members have access. We can provide also with an email address for working group, if you want that. Communication in general goes via my colleague Elisa. She's responsible for Twitter, blog posts, and your page. What will be your page on the Dario website?
Yeah, so if the working group is organizing something, doing something, so that's the person that we should contact mainly.
Yeah.
And the Tomasz.
And yes, usually other working groups, they write to me, Elisa,
Okay.
and so that I'm aware of what's going
Okay.
on, and she's disseminating the word.
Yeah.
And also we have what I mentioned before, the wiki. So the wiki, you will have access, Maciej already has access, so the other chairs will have access to the wiki, and there, for example, you can store documentation about your working group. If you have a meeting and you want to save the minutes in there. Reporting is also important. It will get more and more important, the reporting of working groups from next year. So you can also put save your reports in there, activity reports and so on. So that's also something that we provide.
That's all probably.
I think then maybe the last question. You are saying that we are quite free in setting up agenda of the working group, but maybe are there some formal or informal expectation from the DARA management for the working group activities?
Well, content-wise, not really. Well, let's say that based on the proposal that you sent, of course, like we and on the report that you will be sending, so we will be looking at whether like the activities of the working group are processing according to your proposal. But not really, I would say, content-wise. It's more like procedural look that we keep on the working groups. Yeah.
Also, obviously, the proposal should go in line with DARA strategy, but that's kind of obvious, right? In order to be accepted, so but as you said.
Also like, for example, to one of the requirements to be able to apply for these fundings are like participation in, activities like, so responsiveness to our messages, to the emails, participation in this Basecamp group. Also, we started to organize since last year community calls of working groups, which are usually topic centered. They organize around certain topics that are relevant for the working groups. So that's very important for us that you participate in, that some of you participate in it. So this kind of expectation, I think they're more formal than content-wise.
That's all.
So are there any questions? No, I don't see. Thank you, Francesca. It was a very nice talk and gave us a lot. And now we will be going to, because we had quite a long exchange of emails and some Skypes with members earlier, so we were talking a little bit about the cost action and whether it's a good way to sort of for networking in the future, and we have the opportunity that we have managers of one cost action that is running right now, Piotr and Maciej, and from this end. So we asked them to have a little bit of talk about the cost action, and of course there will be time for some discussion, and then we will go more like to the working group things, current things. Yeah. So Maciej.
Okay, thanks for having us here. So I'm the chair of Cost Action, a new exploratory phase in research on Eastern European cultures of descent, net for descent in short. And on my left-hand side, it's Piotr Wciślik, who's the grant holder's scientific representative in this action, and we run this action together. So we can give you some hints, and the idea is not to get into like too much detail, but rather, as Tomek just suggested, to give you the idea how you can use cost action, how we can use cost action for the working group. So basically, I mean, probably some of you at least are familiar with the cost action, but the first thing to know about it is that it's not a research project; it's like a networking funding. So basically, you create a scholarly network, which basically serves the purpose of connecting people doing some similar stuff or issues. However, you don't get funding for actual work. What you get is funding for travel, meetings, training schools, like research visits. But so all those mobility costs are covered, and you can shape them how you want. But basically, in the end, there has to be some work done in the project, but you cannot pay for it. But the assumption is that all people involved wish to do something together, and they just need to have this networking money. And of course, in most of the cases, although they cannot officially claim it, cost actions are used to come up with other proposals for like framework programs, basically, but they cannot say it officially. So it's not like European funding generates calls for European funding. So that's like this tricky issue here. But they actually this is what people do in those actions. What can we say about this? How the submission process looks like? It's basically, on one hand it's simple, on one hand it's not. I mean, it's simple because the rules are pretty strict. You have to write a proposal of like 15-ish pages long, and you have to have a network of people wishing to support it. And of course there are like some rules governing how many countries should have, how widespread the network should be, etc. But it's all like technical details. Basically what I imagine is that once the group has a sort of shared idea of what to do, of what we would like to achieve, you may start thinking about this application. The call is open, so it's like continuous. However, there are usually around 2 cutoff dates a year. I mean, one cutoff date I think is like around September right now, and the next one usually is like around April. So I guess that the one in a year from now could be an option, but again, it depends on how you work, how you imagine. Also, usually, I mean, this is also like that's not usually cost actions do not get funded after the first time, and they just usually resubmit. I mean, we resubmitted twice. We got it after the second time. I know the action that got after the third time, although I know one action that got it at the first time, so there's no rule. But basically, you have to be ready to resubmit. And sometimes it's just basically somebody didn't like the proposal, then you get another reviewer who loves the proposal, and that's like how it goes, and so they don't have to change much.
How is the acceptance rate of
acceptance rates is pretty low.
But it's kind of like, I mean, the big problem is that like there is a clear unbalance between the humanities and social sciences.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was kind of meant and invented mostly for the STEM sciences.
Okay.
So in this sense, there there are few cost actions from the digital community that get funded every year, but the good news is that there is actually like the DH cost actions are
Yeah.
quite successful in getting those this funding. And so I mean, I think once we decide to get there, we'll have some kind of very more detailed suggestions on how to write a good proposal. We have to remember that it's actually very difficult to write it. It's like a kind of 15-pager text, so you cannot spare that much time, describing everything. And it's also not something you're used to writing, because it's kind of normally when you have a research project, then you have some kind of like deliverables at the end. This is a different logic. This is about justifying all the meetings and why you need kind of to put so many people on the planes for for 4 years, and so on and so forth. And so like kind of you have to describe it in a way that it shows that there is a progress from the start moment to the end moment of the action, that you will actually produce something, and that kind of like all the steps, for producing this something, you don't need actually money for to pay your researchers, but you need to kind of travels, and then they are very, very strict on different balances when it comes to the application. So like kind of like as a formal part of applying, you need to have the main proposer, which was us in our case, but then you need to have the proposers, right? And then when they so like people who kind of say that they will take part in the action, which means they're group basically. But the thing is, and we were very like at the end, we were very strategical to get, because they have different kind of, they do different, like they evaluate based on not only on the merit of the application, but also based on different statistics of what they call like inclusiveness, right? So you have to have they have this concept, which is like this inclusiveness target countries, which we call shortly the special care countries, which means like the new Europe, but also Luxembourg, places like Luxembourg or Portugal, which have basically it's those countries that don't do that well when it comes to ERC and other.
Cost, basically.
And you can
participate in cost too much.
You can go outside Europe as well. I'm on the cost of
Japan,
Argentina, and the States.
I would just get that in the moment. But so this thing is that when you're applying, it's really important to have the balance between the inclusiveness target countries and the normal countries. It's good to have the balance between the early stage early career researchers and the senior researchers and so on, and so forth. So and we were like that. Our history goes further than this cost action, because this cost action was kind of a fruit of another failed application to the Horizon 2020. So we had our kind of like network of the consortium. And then, although we were kind of really, willing to work with everybody, as to some of them we say, okay, you put, because like once you get the money, you can still kind of add people. Right now in our cost action we have around, in our database, we have around 200 people registered who did something, that came to a meeting, went to a conference, and so on, and so forth. When we were starting, it was around like 30 something, like the proposers.
50 proposers.
Right. And then I'm not sure what else to.
I will pick on what you just said. So, and also just to wrap it up. So, basically, the main thing is, first of all, is the network. But basically, the rationale behind cost is something like this: that there is a widespread need in Europe to achieve something, and people work separately on something, and we need the cost action to just put them together to streamline this process. So this is like a category we can think through while talking about bibliographical data, because this could be like this thing we want to achieve. We want to somehow to achieve a certain level of coherence or whatever, or exchange of ideas. But basically the idea behind the action is a crucial thing. So we have to have this idea which really will push some matters forward. And more on that note, later when it comes to actual work, actions work through working groups. And of course we have 6, but it's pretty lots, but there are 4 or 6 working groups. And each working group is dedicated to a certain aspect. And the idea is that they all produce something. It's hard to get something really tangible produced without money, actually. But sometimes, in our case, for instance, like we're doing reports on the field. We did some research people did on their own. But basically, you can also think about, I don't know, like publishing guidelines, standard documents, or whatever, just to answer this need you sort of see in Europe or in beyond, basically. Yeah, and just ending with what Piotr said about those actions with DH components. I mean, our action has one DH component working group, which is dedicated to basically sort of facilitating the uptake of digital technologies by historians, and actually it's led by Jennifer Edmond, the director of Daria. But we do some work, also like some interview with historians to see what they need in work, and just and we're setting up some training sessions for them. But there's also like a big coast action called distant reading, which is basically dedicated to computational research into literature, and their deliverable, which is interesting, is to create the European corpus of the novel, so it could be used by other researchers. So that's just a basic overview, and I think if we're going to work on it, we definitely will get deeper and deeper into those issues, but not today, of course. But we are happy to take any questions if there are any.
So if I understand correctly, the cost actions are a process. It takes a long time. So it's a long process.
4 years, basically. It's 4 years, and also the budget is uncertain always. Like you have to bargain for the budget like every year, and it also depends on how much money the cost has. How big is the action? What are the activities? Are they happy with what you've done so far, etc. So
the legal structure is that